Alright guys, welcome back to another Mask Momentum video. Peter here, and today we're going to go over basically my ProQuest Plus top 8 of Battlehorn Toronto. I also did play it on the Saturday and the Sunday, doing a pretty good record in Canada this weekend. Unfortunately couldn't play out my top 8 because I didn't catch my flight back home, but pretty confident in this Aurora deck. I've been kind of just playing Aurora since the beginning of the Rosetta set, basically ever since the beginning when we were having the ProQuest season. I was just on Aurora the entire time, eventually qualifying with Aurora and, having a lot of success throughout the season, top 16 in Portland, and, this top 8 here. Been really enjoying Aurora this entire season, although most of this meta has kind of been more of a Misfail Part 2 kind of a season, with those decks evolving. This is, the best deck that came out of Rosetta and has continued to be the best deck out of Rosetta, the sets Rosetta for the entire time, basically. Not the best deck in the format, but the best deck from that set specifically. Zen, still incredibly good, as everybody knows. But just wanted to do a little bit of a YouTube video here on my thought process of this. If you want a little bit more in-depth guide and a sideboard guide specifically for the list that I'm doing, starting off doing some Metafy stuff actually, so the link will be down in the description. You can buy it, please. If you want a bigger look on it, you can always ask more on that page as well, and let me know what you guys want to see on that page. You're going to try to do a little more stuff on that page as well, more like the deck heavy stuff instead of the going over top 8s kind of stuff on that platform. So let me know what you guys want to see, and I'll try to make it happen over there. But let's get into it. Aurora. One of the best things about Aurora is you're basically playing what I used to always love playing, which was just like kind of a redline Fi deck that could basically always play its 4-card hand 90% of the time, basically. Obviously, this is known to be the equipment setup that I play in, the majority of my matches, but, you have small tweaks here and there. It's going to be the Crown of Providence, Tunic, Grasp, Snaps, Starfall. There's no other weapon besides Starfall in the list. Snaps just has always been good in a lot of aggro lists. Grasp the Arc Knight, just super solid Runeblade equipment. Basically just always what you want to have. Tunic has been good since the start. Crown of Providence, because you want to filter your hand a little bit, because you do play a lot of instants in this deck, and you want to protect your arsenal because CNC is super prevalent. Basically almost every single deck in the meta, and honestly the game plays CNC at this point, and it is just incredible against it, and there's a lot of other arsenal hate currently. Let's go over my list a little bit. I run a 51 card main board. It makes it easy to put 9 cards in from the sideboard, but we'll go over that in a little bit. Basically, majority of my deck is going to be red, with typical Aurora lists, and I actually only play 6 blues main board this weekend. Was trying a couple things out, and actually this felt really nice, just going down all the way to 6, and just having more of a consistent red package to where I can always just play the hand and not really care about making embodiments near say, but just keeping it rolling more often than not. But starting off with the Arcanic Shockwave, 3 of those, 3 burn-up shocks would have been an incredible card. Discharge, E-Strike, Twine Lightning, Flittering Charge, God in a Flash, Press, Surge, Rabble, Second Strike, Snatch, Static Shock, Arc Lightning, Channel, Current Funnel, 1 Heaven's Claw, and 2 Sigil of Lightnings. So I want to talk specifically about more of like the instants that I'm playing in the list first. It's going to be 3 Electrosonic Discharges, 3 Lightning Presses, 3 Channel Lightning Valleys, and the 2 Sigil of Lightnings. Something specifically that I did not mention here is Sigil of Solace. Sigil of Solace was something that I played throughout the entire year, but I actually didn't play it this weekend especially on Sunday. And I actually replaced basically Sigil for my list and had just Burn Up Shock main the entire time. Something I always had Burn Up Shock in the sideboard specifically because sometimes can't really get it through, a lot of the time. Like if you play Burn Up, you play both sides, you play Burn Up and you don't get the 4 damage. You're kind of using a card just to deal 1 arcane damage, which is not the best. It does block 3, so it's very situationally good, but if you don't push through the Burn Up, and your opponent doesn't really commit too much into blocking it, you're kind of losing a little bit of value there. But always has the good back end. If you have like a 5-card hand, or especially if you have a CLV on the board and your opponent doesn't have Tunic on 3 to like just like quickly AB1, the burn up shock is actually so incredibly good because you shock them for 1 and they have to make the decision right then and there if they're going to allow you to draw a CLV that turn, or if they're going to try to block out the burn up of part of it, which both of them can be very good for you as well. But those are going to be our main instance. Discharge, just a nimblism, that like instant basically, that is also lightning. That a couple of the things that you can do is attack with Starfall just for 1 at the start of your turn, and they have to really decide, like, do I block the Starfall? Obviously, if I'm going to start the turn with a Starfall, then I have a discharge or I have a CLV, and so it's kind of a little bit of a mind game right there. It's like, do I have just +3 to my next thing, or if I play CLV and they don't have a defense direction for it, do they want to let me draw at the very first thing of the turn? And that's something that you have to like force your opponents into doing a lot of the time, that I don't see a lot of people doing. But discharge, super good. Press, obviously getting through all these on hits, as well as supporting some other stuff. Lightning press, just amazing in this style of a deck. And then the CLV, the reason to play the deck, basically. CLV is just incredible. One of the best aggro cards, basically of all time. First time you deal a damage, you draw a card for that turn. Works on both turns. Great synergy with Sigil of Suffering as well. Just actually incredible, getting the additional, basically, damage through. This deck specifically wants just to send 0 for 4s the entire time and basically beat your opponent in turn cycle damage. 3-card 12s, 4-card 16s. This is something that the deck does really well. And CLV, drawing extra cards, even if you draw a blue, making an embodiment, or swinging the extra Starfall as well. Tunic's main thing in this deck is to every 3 turns you get to swing Starfall for free if you don't have a blue. So if you get to start off the turn just basically playing like Lightning Surge from Arsenal, attacking for 4, Tunic Starfall for 2, just an incredible value off Tunic multiple times throughout the game. And a lot of the times I do find myself running Tunic over other things. The games do kind of go long, unless you're playing dedicated aggro versus aggro matchups these days. This would be the instance. The only non-attack action that I play is going to be that Arc Lightning. Arc Lightning is just such an incredible card in this day and age. Dealing 1 arcane damage every time you have Go Again. It's going to trigger off itself, so it starts with 1 damage and then gives your next thing Go Again. It's like kind of the reason why you can play less blues in the list specifically, because you don't actually have to make the embodiment every single turn off of Aurora. You can use Arc Lightning and you make a Rune Chant instead the previous turn if you have an Arc Lightning on the top of your deck that you see from Rabble, or if you're in Arsenal the Arc Lightning. You don't actually have to make the embodiment because you're going to play it the next turn and do basically the same thing. Also, Arc Lightning, being a lightning spell, is going to turn on your Starfall. A lot of the times I do like to start my turn with Arc Lightning and then, if I can, Tunic Starfall, because you're keeping your opponent guessing on what specific 0 for 4 you're playing. It helps a lot by putting additional damage early and then ending with a Snatcher, putting the Snatcher in the middle so they have to block that, and then putting another on hit or just more damage towards the end of the chain, basically, just to kind of push through more damage, keep your opponent guessing a little bit more. Specifically, one of the best cards with Arc Lightning in the deck that I'll speak of first is going to be that Enlightened Strike, one of the classic WTR cards, and just more, it always surprised me how flexible this card is. And it's really good in mid-range matchups, it's really good in control decks, and it's extremely good in aggro decks that can use the draw a card ability on it extremely well, which Aurora can do as well. A lot of the times, a 2-card 7 with the E-Strike is pretty good. 5 Go Again sometimes can be very good for some decks, but if you can ever use that draw card, it's always really good. Same thing with Briar, used to be able to use those lightning embodiments and then play E-Strike at the beginning. That was extremely good. Same thing with Aurora. If you can just playing this, drawing a card with an embodiment or after Arc Lightning, you're basically getting a 0 for 5 with Go Again, instead of a 0 for 4 with Go Again, which is 0 for 5 with Go Again is just actually incredible value. And E-Strike is just one of the pivotal parts. Also blocks 3. As you can see, I actually went with a more of a blocking kind of heavy list. Usually a lot of the Aurora lists have a lot of 0 blocks and a lot of 2 blocks in it, which, don't get me wrong, I do have a lot of 0s and 2s in it, but I actually made some more with the burn-up shocks playing and stuff, and then some of the things in the sideboard, playing a lot more 3 blocks and static shock as well, playing a lot more 3 blocks in the list than we used to, because games go longer, you want to set up a little bit more these days. So there's that E-Strike. Then we got Arcane Shockwave, which is going to be another one that doesn't have natural go again on it. If it's fused, it deals 1 arcane damage and then 4. Just incredible. Basically, if you get to fuse it with a CLV out, it's the same. It's asking the same question. You know, the burn-up shock's asking, the arc lightning asking is like, does your opponent have Tunic on 3? Are they going to pitch for the arcane and block out the 4, or are they going to let you hit with that 1 arcane and let you draw a card at the beginning because they know they can't probably block out the chain, and you get the additional information, additional cards earlier into the turn. So you just kind of make a lot more of, you know, informed decisions on your part when you're just attacking them pretty greatly. Then you have God in a Flash, which is one of the best cards, I think, coming out of Rosetta. It's still one of the cards. I think the deck was moved towards playing more of a God in a Flash kind of combo list earlier into the format, and now it's kind of be pulled back. But God in a Flash is still one of the best cards in the deck. Just, you know, a regular 0 for 4, blocks for 3, and then anytime you play an instant, it returns back to your hand. Obviously, with an embodiment, playing God in a Flash and then bringing it back with Discharge is really good. A lot of the times I've actually played God in a Flash, and then your opponent will block 3, and you'll have a CLV in your hand, and you can either just take the 1 free damage and then maybe arsenal the CLV, or you can actually bounce God in a Flash with the CLV. They've already used a card, and you can kind of do the rest of your chain if you have, you know, maybe an Entwine Lightning or, you know, attacking with Starfall into another 4 to keep the CLV around, but also keeping the God in a Flash more often than not. Pretty interesting line there as well. Then we have Snatch, one of the best, basically one of the best cards as well. Just premier aggro card, 0 for 4, where if it hits, draw a card. Enough said, that card is just always very good. 1 card hand snatches are also just like incredibly good. Makes your opponent have to have a defense reaction. Sometimes even give you 2 cards or give you 1 card and then letting you draw a card, giving equipment. Snatch, main on hit in the entire deck besides the CLV and the burn up. Snatch is one of the premier 0 for 4s. We'll probably always run it in aggro decks. Just one of the best cards, kind of all time for aggro. Then we got Static Shock. Basically the inverse is Arcane Shockwave. You don't have to fuse, but if you've played a lightning card, if this hits, it deals initial 1 damage. I usually hated this card. Usually thought it was like the 81st to 83rd card of the deck. But moving to more of like, I want to block a little bit more, be a little bit more block heavy and setup based a lot of the times. The block 3 on Static Shock actually helps a decent amount, although I usually did not like playing this card in any of my decks. I think it makes a little bit more sense if I'm playing 3 Static Shocks, 3 Burn-Up Shocks main, and then playing, you know, additional Sync Belows in the sideboard just to block a little bit more versus the other aggro decks, trying to play more of a mid-range kind of game plan instead of just non-blocking everything. Trying to, you know, figure out my 5-card hands a little bit more in this deck. That has been extremely well. Then we're going to move on to more of the pseudo go again and true go again kind of a suite, which is going to be the Lightning Surge, which is going to be the pseudo go again. If it's played by an Arsenal, it gets go again. One of the best things to start with, because it is a dedicated Lightning card coming through, can turn on your Starfall, and, you know, you go 4 go again from Arsenal, Tunic, Starfall into another 0 for 4. Just kind of 2-card 10 right there. Helps a lot. You know, 0 for 4. Keeping 1 0 for 4 in your hand, maybe blocking 3 cards, 0 for 4 for Arsenal, 0 for 4 as well, 2-card 8s, very good. You can do a lot of good value with this deck as well. In Twilight Lightning, if it's fused, it gets go again, which is going to be specifically very good. You're playing a lot of lightning cards to turn this on anyways. Just premier, it's so weird because every time you play Twilight, you're like, this should be a lightning card, but it's not. It's not a lightning card, which is super hard. But 0 for 4, go again, premier, very good. Ravenous Rabble, same thing. I'm playing so many red cards, it's usually just going to be a -1 unless you're me. I'm very unlucky. I usually hit the yellows and the blues in the deck, which is statistically not very likely, but it's supposed to be your traditional 0 for 4 Ravenous Rabble, always very good. Floating Charge is one of the ones that I really like a lot. If you played an instant card, this Chain Link, it gets go again. You can, you know, press it, you can somersault it, you can, you know, cast Shock part of the Burn-Up Shock as well if they played like Warmongers against you. You know, you can bounce it with Sigil Lightning, Channel. It's very, very good. Gets you another one of those pseudo go-agains. And then lastly, we're going to look at Second Strike. I didn't know how good Second Strike was going to be at the very beginning of this format, but every time I keep going and going, I love Second Strike. Just being another 0 for 4 with Go Again if you've hit at least one time there. If you start with like a burn up shock, a lot of people will just naturally take the shock just because, you know, if you don't have a CLV out, they're like, okay, well, I want to block this the burn up part, and you start with Second Strike for 0 for 4 with Go Again. That's also a lightning card to turn on, you know, there. You start with a Rabble, they're just like block 3, take 1, you're like Second Strike for 0 for 4. Just incredible, good. I like the chain extender specifically in this list, like the Twilight Lightning, the Rabbles, the Second Strikes, because yes, I do have the embodiment creation off Aurora, but I also have the Arc Lightning. But you do that at the first attack, and then you kind of like Starfall for 2 a lot of the time, but then you have 2 more cards in your hand, and I always want to have like a Second Strike, a Ravenous Rabble, and Entwine into finishing the chain with another 0 for 4. And you know, Second Strike allows you to do that very, very well going through it. And then the blues, just play, you know, Current Funnel, 1 Heaven's Claws into Sigil Lightning. Want the instant count basically for the Sigil Lightning in the main board, and then, you know, just want all these to be lightning cards specifically for the channel, because I just, you know, want to pitch these blues. Getting the Go Again off the blues is really good, and getting the block 3 is also very powerful. Sigil Lightning basically just says your next thing is Go Again, but starting off on turn 0 or turn 1 with a Sigil Lightning allows you to make a Rune Chant, or playing your opponent's turn making a Sigil. So start off the game really, really fast is just quite good. All right, now we're gonna look at more of the sideboard options. I'm playing the 51 card main board, so I'm wanting to bring in 9 cards basically in whatever matchup I'm playing against. Something specifically that I usually do is most likely these somersaults are going in against 99% of the matchups that I'm going to play against. Somersault is one of the best cards in the game. Choosing up 2 attack action cards with 0 or more is good offensively and defensively. Which something is really good is like you can block with E-Strike and Static Shock, and then target them with Somersault and block 6 and bring those 2 cards to your hand. So you're basically turning Somersault into a 6 block, basically, which is incredible. Somersault also allows you to attack with Flittering Charge or any of these Go Again cards, and then bring it back to your hand. So basically turning it, the base floor of this is a 0 for 4, the ceiling is 0 for 6, and it's just actually incredible card. Somersault, probably one of the best lightning cards out there, even seeing Living Legend play in Star Mode. Then we have Exude Confidence. Exude Confidence is something that I don't see a lot of other people run, but I think it's like one of the best 0 for 4s, especially if you start it with an embodiment at the beginning of your turn. Exude is really good against decks that have a lot of defense reactions, which is the majority of the meta these days have a lot of defense reactions. Even the aggro decks are playing a lot of 0 for 4s, 0 for 4 defense reaction like Sink Below, and allowing them not to be able to defend unless, or play an instant before they defend, if they block something with like 5 or greater. You could also, what I like to do is like they block with a 5 power against Ira, and then you can pump it on blocks before you get to attack reactions or defensive reactions, so they can't react on top of it if you pump it, or they want to, then they can't play their defense reaction for the rest of the chain. Extremely good. I've gotten a lot of people with Exude Confidence this entire set. You played it and they just kind of groan. They're like, oh, this makes my entire turn just so much harder. They can't just play the defense reaction whenever they want to. They actually have to block with something equal or greater to have the flexibility that most of the time they don't want to do. And you can always just activate this ability. There's some times where I have a channel out, did a cool 5-card hand with channel, and then I draw up, I have Exude, double blue, or just like, I draw 3 0 for 4s in a blue, and you just like don't have Go Again, and you can pitch like 2 lightning cards, basically keep channel around, and attack for 8 with Exude in the arsenal, another 0 for 4, which is extremely good, and something that is underutilized with Exude a lot of the time. Then I got more of my defensive package here. I got the Sigil of Sufferings, which is very good with the channel. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that is good with the channel in this deck. You're trying to maximize the most amount with it. It's a 0 for 3, but it deals 1 damage, arcane damage to your opponent when it blocks, and then if it deals the damage, it gets +1 defense, so it can block for 4. A lot of the time, in this game, you want to be exact with your resources, and your opponent will, you know, attack with 0 for 4 at the very end, or a dominate attack at the end, have 0 floating, and then you can just ping them with the channel. A lot of the time, Sigil Suffering can be a 0 for 7, which is just incredible if your opponent doesn't if you just draw a card off channel lightning value your opponent's turn. Just a great card, and honestly makes people play AB1 against Aurora, which at the very beginning, a lot of people weren't playing AB1 against them, because realistically, I'm not going to make many Rune Chants with Grasp or anything like that, and the only arcane damage I'm doing is pretty much Arc Lightning. But the more and more the meta's shaped out, Sigil Suffering, just incredible in Aurora. Sink Below is going to be that other defense reaction that we have, going more of a mid-range kind of a blocking style, taking a page out of a couple people's books. Like Viscerai kind of became a little bit more of a slower deck instead of just a play your best 4-card hand. And in suit, Aurora also has to adjust. Sink Below, just incredible. Taking a page out of their rook, using an Rs, playing Sink Below in an aggro deck, just trying to set up a little bit more, play more 5-card hands, play more value oriented, helps a lot versus the Zen matchup. And going in and out, it's been quite good. Gets you filter as well. You draw a hand of 3 attacks and Sink Below. Sometimes you can bail yourself out of breaking in a hand, and it is quite good. Very good against new as well, because you need to try not to get disrupted and chain disrupted in that matchup, and Sink Below helps a lot. Flicker Whip is our next card. A lot of people have been cutting this list in recent iterations of the list, but I still love it. I think the combo potential of Arc Lightning Flicker is one of the best things that you can do in the game. For the people that don't know what the combo is, Arc Lightning obviously says you do an arcane damage every time you have go again triggers this turn. Flicker says if you fuse it with a lightning card, anytime that you would deal 1 arcane damage, you do that much arcane damage +1. An action card effect you control, which Arc Lightning is an action card effect that I will control for the entire turn, basically. The combo is you play Arc Lightning, deal your opponent 1 arcane damage, then you play Flickerous fusing it. Itself will deal 2 damage because it says deal 1 arcane damage to target hero, so itself will do 2 damage off of itself when you fuse it, and then the go again will trigger and you'll do an additional 2 damage to your opponent off the Arc Lightning. And then you can, you're playing your go again spells, you're playing Ravenous Rabble, you pitch a blue to swing with Starfall, you make a Rune Chant, and this is all going to ping your opponent for 2. And specifically, a lot of the time you play the Crown of Dominion to be getting the gold token in Aether Ironweave, and Aether Ironweave will destroy itself and make 2 resources, ping your opponent for 2, and then you can pop your gold by paying the 2 from the Ironweave to draw a card and ping your opponent for 2. So you're basically using your equipment to ping for 4 arcane damage and draw a card, which can also be turned into more damage that also pings your opponent. A lot of the times you're doing upwards of 16, 18, 20 arcane damage to your opponent in 1 turn, getting over that, Enigma hump that they're trying to fatigue you, the CYB decks. I think it's just incredibly good, and I honestly just don't want to leave my deck without a Flicker Wisp as well. Speaking of CYB, playing the 2 Poison the Wells, I'm always really respecting that. I also think there's a really huge resurge of CYB new later into the season. I think it's the best way to build new specifically, and Poison the Well, very good against it. If you think your opponent may be playing CYB Enigma as well, Poison the Well also very good in that matchup. And CYB might not be as prominent as it was at Worlds, but besides CYB new specifically, which I think is the best deck for CYB currently, but Poison the Well, still a great answer for it. Also, you have Random Verdance tech because they'll try to combo into you or get enough life to get over the hump. Poison the Well, just very good against them as well. Then the last non-equipment slot in our sideboard is going to be Warmonger's Diplomacy. I was always a big fan of playing 3 in my deck, but the more slow the Viscerai decks are going to become, the less you kind of need the Warmonger's Diplomacy, because they're playing more bricks in their deck, and they're trying to play around Warmonger specifically from you as well. So just playing 2 in this iteration of the list, but Warmonger is one of the best cards in the game just to hose more Runeblade classes that aren't Aurora, because Aurora just cares about light, just cares about instants and not non-attacks as well. Warmonger's just incredible. Would always want to play this in my sideboard. If it's free, if I can always play it against, there's usually no downside of playing Warmongers in your deck if it doesn't hose you. Then, obviously, my equipment, have that Aether Ironweave Crowned Minion package for that Arc Lightning Flicker. Got the Dyadic Carapace, which is going to be blocking 2, and also having Arcane Barrier 2. Being able to just block a little bit more when I know I'm going to play against more aggressive decks that I'm going to get maybe 2 activations of my Tunic off of. Blocking 3 other chest pieces, very, very good most of the time. And then also gives you just a little bit more protection versus Kano, just having AB2 just naturally in the list. Then you have Lightning Greaves. Lightning Greaves, you would think would be the boots that you always use, but Snapdragon Scalers just have overperformed way, way more than not. But Lightning Greaves obviously very, very good with Gone in a Flash, but I've kind of moved away from playing a lot of instants in my deck, so Lightning Greaves is a little bit worse on that end, but it just has natural AB1 when you're playing the Mirror, when you're playing against Viscerai or anything like that, so you don't get randomly blown out. And also blocks for 1, which is very, very good against new when they come at you with like the blue dagger, and you can block 1 very perfectly on that as well, or just blocking on hits that are, you know, 4 damage based. Very, very good with Lightning Greaves. And then can't leave my home without Shock Tremors. You know, as a Kano player myself, I gotta respect it. You know, gotta put the Shock Tremors in your list. A lot of them were playing Spellvoid 3, the helmet and the chest beat and the arms, but I don't think you really need it that much. Kano's not really in this meta at all, but I think Shock Tremors specifically is very good against Acilio, which you don't really see that often, which is kind of like a C tier deck, but just don't want to get randomly blown out by it, so I play a lot of Shock Tremors. This is something that you can cut in your list. I just don't think the wizards are good at all, so you just don't need to play Spellvoid, but it gives you a lot of percentage points for one thing, although you could also just play a third Warlord's Diplomacy, or, you know, like maybe another blue in another situation, or if you have, you know, a pet equipment that you want to play, you don't have to play Shock Tremors as well. But that's going to be, you know, me going over my Aurora deck that I top 8'd the ProQuest Plus with in Toronto this past weekend. Got a little bit sick from coming back. You know, it was very cold up in Canada comparatively to where I live, and my body going through 60-degree difference. It was quite a lot, so thank you for bearing with me with my nose being a little bit stuffed. But if you have any more interest in learning more about Aurora, you can check in the link the description below on my Metafy page, going over a little bit more detailed sideboard options in the sideboard guide, and I'll see you guys then. Goodbye.